So if Airsoft is supposed to be this spectacular training product for people to be better shooters and for SWAT teams and for cops and for competitive shooters, blah, 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 right? It's supposed to be great. Why aren't more dudes talking about it? Most people are used to seeing junker airsoft guns. They go to Walmart, they go to Big Five, they go to, some giant major retailer, and they see like those $80 or $120 like clear plastic guns. Maybe not even 100, like maybe under $80. The clear plastic ones, like the M4 that's this big, and like, oh, that's what airsoft is, right? Like that spring pistol that I can see through is gonna make me a better shooter. Now, sometimes you might see Elite Force Glocks in, I know Sportsman Warehouse carries them, but you have to understand the business dynamic of that. Elite Force is under Umerix. Umerix makes BB guns and all kinds of other general sporting goods products. So if I'm a huge sporting goods store and I already sell Umerix guns or products or whatever, I can already get Elite Force Glocks. I just throw them in there with the rest of the stuff I buy because it's the same company. It's just a different name? And the Elite Force Glocks come with the Glock name. They're the only ones that do that. So there's also that brand recognition as well. So people go, that's officially licensed Glock. I want to buy that. There is still a small population of the shooting community that says there is zero training value in airsoft products. Zero. I'm talking there are Reddit subthreads that say airsoft products don't work for training, blah blah blah, but they completely discredit whatever perceived value can come from an airsoft gun. Usually, this is going to be a little mean, those people are idiots because they either don't understand modern airsoft products, they don't really have a shooting background, they don't have an airsoft background, and or they don't have a training background, meaning they don't know what they're talking about because they don't have the experience to back that claim. If we as shooters of every level can agree that red guns offer some sort of training value, the red guns or blue guns, or the plastic inert trainers, and dry firing, the act of shooting an empty gun, of just going click, if we can agree that those two things have training value, then why can't we also agree in that same conversation that airsoft guns don't have a training value? Now, there is an argument for products, specific products. So there are plenty of M9s that won't fit into an M9 holster, that's fine. But if you look at realistic modern airsoft products like the KWA guns, like the Elite Force Glocks, I really challenge people to put up a legitimate argument that says that airsoft guns have no training value. I'll even argue against that it has a minimal training value. I say it has a substantial training value, and I'm going to say it has a higher value than dry firing because you can still accomplish dry firing with an airsoft gun. You can still do it with most modern airsoft guns. The ones that are designed to be trainers. So specifically, I'm talking about the Elite Force Glocks and the KWA pistols. Those guns are designed to fit in holsters and to match one-to-one the real thing. But the problem comes in brand awareness. So there aren't, like, if you open up any shooting magazine or you go to a shooting event or you go to a gun range or whatever, any place that's where the demographic is just shooters, there are probably no airsoft products there because no airsoft company has really put their foot into that market. KWA is probably doing the best. And this, you can argue that, like, oh, James is saying that because he's a KWA law enforcement. Fair point. I understand your argument. Hear me out. I was speaking this game long before I was a KWA law enforcement ambassador. KWA, if you look at their social media, if you look at their website, if you look at how they're doing, just go to the KWA website. There's a section specific for government training. Go to their Instagram, and they're reposting those videos from the KWA Insider. If you go to the YouTube channel for KWA, they've been doing law enforcement training videos where they pair with actual TAC teams and do this stuff. So KWA has been the most successful at trying to dip their foot into that real shooting market. I would say Elite Force is a strong silver medalist, but I think depending on their agreement with Glock, when you pair with a company, when you partner with a company, that company will tell you exactly how you can and cannot market. So let's say I'm Elite Force. This is pure speculation. So Elite Force says, hey Glock, I want to make, airsoft Glocks. And Glock says, okay, that's cool. You can't do these kinds of posts. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't make this kind of content. They control that content. And a good example of how that might be true is if you look at the Elite Force Instagram, and a lot of their content is actually reposted from other Instagram accounts. But Elite Force itself hasn't done a lot of Elite Force internal Glock content specific to firearms training in the same sense that KWA does. I'm not saying that they don't have the desire or whatever. I'm saying it hasn't been done yet. Well, how come government agencies like the Army's not using it? How come you don't see a bunch of government agencies use it? And how come they're still using Sims? You have to understand how government contracting works. Realistically, in order for a government to acquire your products as a retailer or as a wholesaler, as a distributor, as a manufacturer, whatever, you really need to have a GSA code, which is really like a SKU or an inventory code in the government's acquisition place for them to get. So let's say, like Glocks have a GSA code. Glock is a GSA supplier. Beretta has a GSA code. Ford Motors has a GSA because they're all government fleet contractors. A GSA code means that the government has approved your company for mass purchases. Now, I will tell you from experience, local level, my police agency that I worked for did purchase a single KWA gas rifle from a local store in Tracy that's since gone out of business. That's kind of shady story on the side. But because it was one rifle, it was considered a local level purchase, and they just did it on a regular government credit card. But in the world of acquisitions, of federal acquisition of things, no airsoft company that I'm aware of has a GSA code, not even KWA. So that's the next big challenge, is trying to get a company to a point where they're confident enough in that market to launch themselves into government contracting. Now, I'll tell you that KWA products are at FLETC, they're at various law enforcement agencies around the world, but they're still working their way into the grand scheme of things. You also have to realize that for force training specifically, simunitions has been in the game since I was a kid. Sims have been around for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. They've been around for a while. They're already heavily rooted, they're already heavily recognized, and they already have government codes and all this complete government-friendly infrastructure, because I would assume that that's simunitions' #1 customer. So people are already used to seeing that thing. So if you're already used to it, you just go, oh, just get what those guys have. Just get simunitions, because it's the easiest product we can acquire. So that doesn't necessarily mean that airsoft is superior to simunitions or that simunitions is superior to airsoft. It just means that simunitions is way easier for a government agency to acquire because of how government contracting and acquisition works. Well, if airsoft is so good for real steel shooters, how come there's not more content out there about that? Not a lot of content creators can speak both languages, and I've spent hours of my time just going through and watching videos where airsofters talk about real guns and where real shooters talk about airsoft guns, and there's a gap. There's a big language gap, because generally they only just do one. Not a whole lot of guys do one or the other. I'd say probably one of the best guys out there that can speak that language would be Gunfather Milsim, if you follow his channel. He's an active duty SWAT guy. I can't recall what state, but the stuff that dude says is legit because he has an understanding of both worlds, because he lives in both worlds. But if I'm a competitive shooter that uses airsoft guns for training, I'm probably not going to really understand the dynamics of the product. Maybe I don't really understand how to articulate the implementation. That's the other thing. If you watch most of these videos, 8 out of 10 times, all they're doing is talking about the product. And you could easily just buy a Glock off of a website and make a video where you're just reading off the product descriptions. It's got this polymer frame to it, and it has a real metallic side, and it blah, 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 blah. But what those people aren't telling you is how to take that product and effectively implement it into a training program for you to use. That's the other thing, is you don't have a lot of trainers out there doing that. When one of my students comes to me and says, hey, I want to use this airsoft gun for training, what do you think I should do? I am not going to then respond by going, well, let me tell you about how realistic this polymer frame is, blah, blah. No, I'm going to say, hey, here's the target setup, here's the environment you need to create, run these drills, here's some of the limitations that this airsoft gun that would have based on what your actual pistol might do. It's pretty effective out to about 17, even 10 yards realistically. Anything past that might be a little dodgy here and there depending on some things. But what my students ask me is, how do I take this thing and make me a better shooter? And then I answer their question based on that. You don't have a lot of content creators doing that. They just talk about the product. Or the other style of content you see is overall endorsements. Like, yeah, I'm a great shooter and I think that using airsoft is a good idea. Here's why. It's cost effective, it's realistic, it fits in the holster, blah, 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 blah. But again, later in that video, what they don't talk about is, and here's how you use it as a training tool. They just go, yep, it's a good idea, end of video, give me the YouTube love. I've linked a few videos in the descriptions below, and this is the part where I do this and go, check out the videos in the description below, and remember to like and subscribe because I need that. One of them is a video from Sportsman's Warehouse where it's not great. It's for a company that far out of airsoft, that's just a generic sporting good company. I will say that's probably the best video you're gonna find. They do a little bit more than product demoing. They actually give some tips on how to set up a range and some other stuff, but you can tell that he doesn't understand airsoft guns. So in my opinion, just my opinion of that video, they made it to sell products because they link and talk about buying the gun, buying the CO2 canisters, and buying the BBs, and also encouraging web traffic by downloading their targets that they made, which are posted on their website. But again, they're a large sporting good retailer, so they have an Umerix vendor account, so it's easy for them to get Elite Force Glocks. What's interesting, this is going a little off topic, kind of, they only talk about CO2. If you're an airsofter, you know the three gases used are green gas, propane, and CO2. A lot of higher level competitive players think that CO2 is garbage. I think CO2 is a garbage gas to use for airsoft guns. But if I am a retailer and I already sell a ton of BB guns which are CO2 powered, then what I want to also do is find a way to sell products that need CO2 canisters, because that's where I'm making my money. CO2 canisters are consumable. You pop them, they run out, you put in another one. They come in what, 4 or 5 a pack for a few bucks? So now I'm trying to generate more sales of CO2 packs and canisters. That's why they're not selling green gas. And that's probably also why they're not encouraging people to buy propane canisters and use propane, because they're trying to keep selling, get that CO2 money. They're trying to get those dollars. So a large part of this video is, hey, here's this thing. It's pretty great. Spend all your money here. But they're not giving you the detailed implementation directions. Like, they're not telling you about ways it can go right, ways it can go wrong, range, distances, all this stuff. It's not a detailed video. And if you're a dude like me who nerds out on details and particulars and specifics, then that's something that's important to me. So there's 4 videos I've linked in the description below that you should check out, which kind of re-emphasize my points. First one is that Sportsman's Warehouse firearms training with realistic airsoft. Not a terrible video, but you could clearly tell that guy is reading off a script and most likely doesn't have a lot of awareness of airsoft. He's not an airsofter. He's just a salesman. That's it. Which is fine. Obviously I expect a company to make money, but depending on what you're trying to do with airsoft guns into real live shooting training, there's a lot of gaps in that video. Gunrunner 411 did spectacular jobs, amazing jobs of giving detailed descriptions on how he made his indoor gun range. And it's high level, really high level stuff that he did in his garage. Very well done. If you're looking to set up an airsoft gun range, that's a pretty in-depth look. I've done a couple videos on how to set some of that stuff up. It really just talks about targets that you can use around the house and then backdrops and a little bit of how to use them and stuff like that. So it's not better or worse than Gunrunner 411's video, it's just different. There's just a different kind of information there. Spectacular example of a high-level shooter talking about airsoft products can be found in the Iron Ridge video that I have linked down below. Dude, that guy is talking about stuff that I haven't thought about. He's talking about the lag in the trigger, and there's just so many things. His detailed understanding of the Glock pistol, the Glock firearm, is super high level, and he's able to transfer that over and compare it against the Elite Force Glock, and he does a spectacular job at it. That's one of the best. I'm going to go on record and say that is the best video for comparing a real Glock against an airsoft Glock out there. It's the best, and I've searched high and low. No one has done a better job than that guy in comparing the two products. Finally, the last video is down in the description, is linked in the description below, right? This is what YouTubers do. My big deal now. From Rangemaster Larry of Airsoft Medicine. I believe this is someone with minimal to medium understanding of airsoft products, airsoft usage, basically airsoft playing, actual guns, and how to use them. Says he's a range master. Yeah, look, anyone can be a range master online, all right? But the comparison he does with the Glock and the ATP from KWA is not that great. It's very ambiguous. It's very generic. He doesn't use that video to showcase how much he knows about both products. If that makes sense. I'm not saying that any of this is bad. I'm saying depending on what you're looking for when you're searching for like airsoft CCW drills. There's a lot of guys out there that are only making product review videos because that's all they know how to do, because they're not shooters. They don't have a competitive background. They don't have a law enforcement background. They don't have a firearms training background. They don't have an airsoft background. They don't know airsoft products. So what you have is a lot of guys that seem like they're trying to be specialists when they're just dudes.
Caber, who the f*** are you, nerd?